We have an applicant who is challenging the vaccine passport. That leave hearing is due to be heard on Thursday the 27th of January, and that will be before the High Court, and we shall see whether the decision will be made on the day or a judgment reserved. And the case that we have put forward is that there is no evidence that vaccine passports do what it has been implied that they do. Because, for example, if the vaccine passport scheme is ruled unlawful, I think that there will be serious questions asked in regards to the decision makers. We are finding in the cases that we are acting in that there is significant amounts of academic research and position papers that are being put forward in regard to these issues. I also think that people have utilised to the very last degree freedom of information requests, and they are coming out thick and fast. When this has come to an end, that there will be significant analysis of the decisions made by persons and organisations during the course of the last 2 years. And I would also say that it will come under scrutiny. I say that with a degree of certainty, that it will come under scrutiny.
Welcome back to the emergency broadcast. We're very privileged to have Michael Brentnall with us again. Welcome, Michael. This is the second time we've been together, and I think it's been 4 to 6 weeks, however long it was since we did our first one, and so much has changed in that period of time. So thank you very much for coming along.
Thank you for inviting me.
We're going to dig into some stuff, and hopefully you can give us an update on everything from your angle, what's happening from the legal side. So, Michael, over to you, my friend.
Well, basically, from my recollection of our last conversation, there has been quite a few developments. There has been a number of judicial reviews that are either lodged or about to be lodged.
Just for the discerning viewer, a judicial review is what exactly?
Well, a judicial review is the court's review of a government policy or decision, and the court will, in the first instance, have a leave application, which will be, they have to satisfy that there's an arguable case in respect of the applicant's case against the government policy or decision.
Right.
A leave hearing will be held, and if leave is granted, it will go to a full application for judicial review, which is a full hearing in front of the High Court.
Okay, thank you.
So the two cases in question that we would say are the most prominent are we have an applicant who is challenging the vaccine passport or vaccine certification scheme, in which I think everybody is aware of what that entails and what it has brought to society. Mm-hmm. So that has been challenged on a number of grounds: human rights grounds, GDPR, and what we would say traditional judicial review grounds around proportionality, reasonableness, etc. That leave hearing is due to be heard on Thursday the 27th of January, and that will be before the High Court on that morning, and it will be heard by a High Court judge, and we shall see whether the decision will be made on the day or a judgment reserved, but the case will be put forward on behalf of the applicant by our office and the barristers that we have instructed.
Very good. So we look forward to that one with optimism.
Yeah. The other case relates to the recent amendment of mask or face coverings, which happened pre-Christmas, really in the mouth of Christmas, whereby amendments were made regarding the exemption of face coverings. Mm-hmm. So, as people may well be aware, the exemption related to whether or not a person had to disclose the evidential basis of their exemption, which was quite controversial, and it caused quite a stir. What happened subsequently was that our office issued pre-action correspondence to the Department of Health, and in between times over Christmas and the New Year, the executive then decided that they would not proceed with it. They suspended that. However, our case continued, and even in light of the suspension, legal aid was granted because they believed that there was a meritorious case. And even though it had been suspended, I believe there are members of the executive who stated that it may have been suspended, but it may also proceed. So on that basis, we continued with our challenge on the lawfulness of these amendments, and that is to be lodged in the very near future with the High Court.
Very good. So there's lots happening.
Definitely.
People should be encouraged. A lot of people I talk to are concerned that, things aren't happening because they're not in the know. So, doing things like what we're doing tonight actually helps people to understand a lot of people are working very hard in the background and things are moving forward.
Certainly.
In a good, positive way.
Certainly we are being instructed on a regular basis into a range of these issues.
Okay, very good. This is a question that came in earlier. Are we winning? This is a question that was put to me earlier and asked Michael. Are we winning? Well,
that's a very hard question to answer.
Yeah.
I can only answer in respect of individual cases that I'm instructed on. And I would say there is a significant question to answer in regard to vaccine passports. And the case that we had put forward is that there is no evidence that vaccine passports do what it has been implied that they do. And really our case is that the evidence has not been put forward supporting that decision to implement these vaccine passports.
Sure. Planning going forward, there's lots of stuff that's happening within your office. The next 30, I like to break things down into sort of like immediate, near term, medium term, long term. Yeah. How do you see things panning out? If you're optimistic about the future, how is Northern Ireland going to move forward in the next 30, 60, 90 days?
Well, I think that's going to be dependent on what happens in these cases. I don't think solely these cases are going to be the ultimate factor in how things go ahead, but I think they're going to be a determinant factor as to how society proceeds. Because, for example, if the vaccine passport scheme is ruled unlawful, I think that there will be serious questions asked in regards to the decision makers of these policies. But because I think it has to, if it is deemed unlawful, that something so disruptive and so it's such an imposition on somebody's life to have to show credentials to enter a restaurant or a bar, and we're really not used to it because we've never had to do anything like that. And the business community, I think, are in disarray as to what this has done, especially the hospitality industry, that what this has done.
Are there any cases of discrimination where people are going in and being told, no, you have to put a mask on, and saying, no, hang on, this is not law, asking why they're exempt, do they need to say they're exempt? There's a lot of that going on at the minute, and people are sort of very nervous about, am I supposed to give my medical details away? Can I tell them to bugger off? What can I do here? Can you enter?
Yes, I can give you a general gist of what sort of inquiries we're receiving in our office. There seems to be quite a significant degree of confusion as to what the position is in regarding masks. We have cases that range from TransLink to bars to restaurants. We have one instance where prohibition notice was issued against the bar. It was then retracted the following day, and basically it's the first of its kind in Belfast courts. It's being appealed, our office is appealing it. It's the first of its kind, and it's being challenged that this prohibition notice was unlawful and it was not done properly within the full...
Okay, and just explain to me what a prohibition notice is, what that means in real terms.
A prohibition notice is something that the police can enforce on a bar, essentially to prohibit them from... Shut them down, yeah. And they did so in this case, and it took a full day to get in touch with the PSNI and to get this decision overturned.
So police can do that, serve that notice. I thought only a court could do that.
No, well, there's certain legislation they can use, but in respect of the coronavirus legislation, this can be used whereby they can essentially shut a bar.
Okay. What about the work that's going on with the Metropolitan Police Force and what's happening there? Is that something that you can explain? Because that's got me a wee bit confused as to why the PSNI aren't doing something here, and yet the Met Office is doing something in London that may have an impact here. If you can just touch on that.
Yeah, well, I can give an insight because, again, our office is instructed in regard to an interconnected matter. What I'll explain, I'll give a bit of background, is that members of the public in England made a complaint to the Metropolitan Police in regards to vaccine injury, damage and death. And that complaint was made to the Metropolitan Police, which was accepted.
Was that the one in Hammersmith?
It was, and there was a crime reference number given in regards to that. So what had happened from there was that was being investigated. It was confirmed that it was being investigated. The officers of the Metropolitan Police had been in touch with the complainants in that case. What thereafter happened was, I know and I've been informed that a person in Scotland made the same complaint to Police Scotland, which was refused, and thereafter that person made a additional complaint to the Metropolitan Police under the guise of the existing crime reference number, and that was accepted. And even though there was a jurisdictional issue whereby Scotland is obviously of a different jurisdiction than England or the Metropolitan Police area, that was accepted. And I can now confirm that our office has been instructed on a similar basis to make that complaint to the Metropolitan Police in regard to the same issue, and that has been done, and we are awaiting correspondence from the Metropolitan Police confirming that they have accepted under the same crime reference number the additional statement of complaint from our client.
Well, that's potentially big.
It is. What I can say at this stage is the PSNI have refused to investigate.
Is this where we stray into the area of when police fail to investigate a potential crime that's reported to them? Do we stray into the area of malfeasance, misfeasance? Where do we go with that if the PSNI refuse to investigate?
Well, essentially, if and there is an if at present, if the Metropolitan Police confirm that they're willing to add this to the larger investigation, and the PSNI then maintain their position that they refuse to investigate it, our client has to instruct us, but I imagine they will instruct us to judicially review that refusal to investigate by the PSNI, and again that will be judicially reviewed and placed before the High Court in Belfast.
Because we know we are dealing with a very corrupt system, and it's not just the corrupt system in Northern Ireland, and it's not just the judicial legal system that's gone astray. It's global. I guess really I want to try and get out of you what you think is going on at the minute and where your focus lies and how you can help other people who are struggling. I mean, even earlier on we had somebody in whose mother was treated so terribly in a hospital situation. It's almost like unlawful killing, and you're listening to it right before your very eyes. They want to get in touch with you. I mean, what's your capacity to help these people? Because I know you're very, very good at what you do, but you're just one man and one firm. Are you in danger of getting overloaded as these things start to come out of the woodwork and people say, where do we go for help? Well, you go to Brentnall Solicitors. Is there a danger that you're going to get overloaded here?
Well, to answer the first part of the question, basically we have, when somebody comes to us, we will firstly see what the issue is that is in question. If it's an individual issue or it's specific to them, we will tailor our challenge or case to whatever the circumstances are. For example, I know the case that you're talking about, and basically there is a number of options that family could take. There is an inquest, there is a claim against the state in regard to either medical negligence or whatever the cause of action may be. So in response to that, there is an option for most people if they have circumstances that they can put to us whereby we can put to whoever may be that there is a case to answer. And in regard to the second part of your question, what I have found is there is quite a significant amount of duplication. We would get a number of inquiries about the vaccine passports or certifications. We would get quite a number of inquiries about masks. And I think that what's going to happen in these cases is that the law is going to be, on analysis by the court, it's going to be clarified. So I think in respect then of the last part, will we be overloaded? I don't believe so. I think we have the capacity to take these cases, and I do think that the law will be clarified in respect of the position regarding passports or vaccine passports, masks, or whatever the issue. And generally speaking, after that, individuals will come to us with specific issues which we will be able to sort into specific legal areas and have carriage of those cases and take them forward for them.
Very good, thank you. I get quite a lot of people talking to me about discrimination in the workplace. A lot of people are very, very concerned that if they don't comply, they're going to be out of a job. And it's not just within the NHS. You know, I'm hearing post office workers, I'm hearing Northern Ireland Fire and Rescue Service, I'm hearing lots of people in lots of different places, some of them quite high up, saying, what do we do when push comes to shove? If they say, look, I'm really sorry, but, you know, you're going to have a vaccine in order to stay in the job. Is that a human right discrimination? Is that something that your firm deals with as well?
Of course. I would describe that as a human rights challenge, and I think that has to go again. Our specialism is in and around judicial review, and that is a case which I would say is a case for judicial review, and it would be a meritorious case to put before the courts, because that is an issue which it's obviously a government policy or decision, but that policy or decision hasn't come here. I know, and listeners will be aware that the decision has come to England in regards to NHS staff. However, it hasn't come to this jurisdiction. If it were to, then certainly it would be challengeable, because there is a human rights ground challenge on that.
I'm just thinking, thank you, Michael, for that. I'm just thinking, where does the Human Rights Commission stand on this? I mean, is this an organisation that you're in touch with? One would assume that they are swamped with these kind of inquiries, not just people coming to you because you're a human rights specialist, but the Human Rights Commission. Are they, as far as you're aware, are they fielding inquiries to do with this? Where do they stand on all this? Have they made it public? Have they made a public statement?
Well, all I can say is the only contact I've really had from the Human Rights Commission is in regard to a number of specific cases. They expressed an interest in the vaccine passport or certification scheme case, and that was it. They didn't act as an intervener. We sought clarity as to where they would go with that and if they would act as an intervener. However, they informed us that they would hold their position on that until the case proceeds. And I can also say that the client who has been in contact with the Metropolitan Police has also initiated a complaint with the Human Rights Commission on the same basis as the complaint to the Metropolitan Police.
I mean, if I take a few steps backwards, it feels to me from the people I talk to that this information is driving forward, and the information and the lies are beginning to be exposed, and the weight of evidence is coming down on our side now to move these things forward. Would you agree that there's kind of a tidal wave of information coming out of wrongdoing, that it's only a question of time? Because we're hearing snippets about government, not just in Westminster, but government is backing down on certain things and starting to withdraw and back off slightly. Is that a kind of an impression you're getting too?
Well, what I could say is that disclosure of information is becoming well, it's been becoming increasingly more relevant, and there is a significant amount of it. Mm-hmm. So I can say that in regards to our cases. Additionally, I can say that there are significant academic works in regard to a lot of these issues that are now being propelled into the media, let's say. Maybe not the mainstream media, but we are finding in the cases that we are acting in that there is significant amounts of academic research and position papers that are being put forward in regard to these issues. I also think that people have utilised to the very last degree freedom of information requests, and they are coming out thick and fast. And I think that the most significant, the one that I have seen, and I've seen it today, is in regard to the deaths of people solely with COVID or SARS-CoV-2, and essentially with no comorbidities, and the number is very low.
Very low, in the hundreds. And they shut down a country.
This is all, and I believe that this will come in a further analysis, that when this has come to an end, that there will be significant analysis of the decisions made by persons and organisations during the course of the last 2 years. And I would also say that it will come under scrutiny. I say that with a degree of certainty, that it will come under scrutiny from persons and organisations, and I would say from the legal quarter, it will definitely.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I would also encourage anyone listening or watching to be very careful on note-taking, etc. You know, if they're in situations that are a bit suspect, that they use their video recorder, they use their phone, they take notes straight away while it's still fresh in their minds as to what's going on, whether it's challenges in the workplace, whether it's challenges going into shops. Make sure everything is recorded as we go forward, because I think I agree with you that the liability for the wrongdoing, people will be held to account. Possibly not this year, but definitely as this starts to come out, the wrongdoing must be challenged, and the wrongdoers must be held to account. There can be no escape. That's my personal opinion. So I think it's really important that we encourage people to make good notes.
Well, as a lawyer, we are evidence-based.
Of course.
So everything that you have just said is all about collating evidence, and we work on that basis. And we can obviously put forward a stronger case the more evidence that we have to assist.
Absolutely. You know, I mentioned, using the phone for I've started wearing as you know, I've started wearing a body cam and just recording things. If I go into shops, if I'm walking around, I'll put the body cam on, because I never know when I'm going to challenge, and I was challenged by a lady in Marks and Spencer's in Forestside who accused me of getting too close to her food. And it was at the checkout operator, and this is a complaint that's going to be ongoing with Marks and Spencer's, because I was standing too close to her food on the checkout. As it came towards me, I'd already finished, but she put her hands up and said, "Stop! That man's not wearing a mask. Stop that food right now. Get that food back. Get it away from him." And I said, "What?" And I started to walk towards her, and she put her hands up like I was holding a gun to her, like this, and she said, "Get away from me. You're too close to my food. If you come any closer, I'm going to walk away from my food." So I said, "Okay, walk away." But I walked away. I didn't want to. I could see she was absolutely terrified. In her mind, me getting too close to her food, I was going to kill her. So I challenged Marks and Spencer's, and I said, you're not putting up clear enough messages to respect everybody. In the same way that Lidl, for example, would put over the tannoy, "Please respect everybody's journey." Mask exemptions, there are exemptions that apply. Marks and Spencer's don't do that. So unless people challenge on a day-to-day basis what they're seeing, things are just going to get pushed forward and forward and forward. So it's up to the citizens to stand up to that in whatever way they can. That's just my personal experience in the last week.
Just on that, the legislation is quite clear, and I know it has backtracked from the position that they took prior to Christmas, but the legislation is clear. You do not have to prove an exemption. as it stands, there is no right of anybody to ask for evidence of your exemption.
And that's important that people understand that because even Marks and Spencer said to me, well, have you not got a lanyard you could wear? I said, I don't need to wear a lanyard. Me saying I'm exempt is enough. Is that not right?
Well, even to wear a lanyard is not... What I would do is clarify this, because the decision to enforce has been suspended. Enforce, what I would say, is the enforcement of evidence-based exemptions. And the executive, Paul Given, made a statement to say that was suspended. So this is what I spoke of earlier on, that there needs to be a degree of clarity in regard to this, because everyday goings on and everyday activity does not appear that there is clarity around this. And this is why we are continuing with our challenge. It may be suspended, but this needs to be clarified, and the lawfulness of this this whole situation around face coverings needs to be looked at. Yes,
indeed. And I think it's the perceived inconsistencies. Because of that lack of clarity coming from the Hill, businesses, I really don't know where they stand. So I'm seeing lots of personalised messages being put up about face coverings, and there's no consistency there. Hence, the problem with Marks and Spencers. Same with another place out towards Lanyards over here. There's a big farm shop, and the owner doesn't wear a mask. The owner's staff don't wear masks. So there's a big sign up saying, in line with government guidance, please make sure you wear your masks. So I challenged him on camera and said, how can you put a sign up for your customers and then your staff are walking around without masks? You've got to be a bit consistent here. You've got to put something up, exemptions apply or something. So he was very gracious about it, apologised and said he was going to change the signs. So once again, there is this inconsistency that causes somebody who isn't wearing a mask to feel uncomfortable around other people that do, because they get challenged. Whatever happened to, well, hang on, human rights legislation, the equality legislation, all of these fundamental human rights, things that have been set in stone. And, I know you don't like talking about Nuremberg Code and stuff, yeah. But all of these things were set for a reason. I thought Northern Ireland, when it does these things, it's secondary legislation, and therefore it cannot override these things. Yeah, well, they try to, but they can't.
There's two issues there. The first one I'll address. The legislation that is in place is lawful, in the sense that is the legislation in place, that is the law. Now, until a court deems it to be unlawful, or quashes it, or does whatever a court does, then that is the law.
So if tomorrow they meet to discuss a new law, but it's in total contradiction to equality rights, human rights, they can override that by saying we've just brought in a new law.
They will put it in place until it's challenged. And this is why these challenges are so important. Because whilst these are in place, that is the law. Now, if a decision came tomorrow that from the High Court to say that these were unlawful, it would not be the law.
It all seems sort of arsey-farsey, chicken and egg round the wrong way to me. Like, how can you bring in a law and then challenge it and then get it turned over by a judicial review, rather than saying we want to bring in a law, we better just check with this first before we bring it in to make sure that it is lawful.
They're supposed to do human rights checks and get that passed legally from their legal representatives, but they have clearly just gone ahead and implemented this.
Just blasting an agenda.
They had got it through the executive. They didn't put it really before scrutinised before the Assembly. It was done post facto. So the discussion that was done in the Assembly over vaccine passports was done after it was implemented. Now that's putting the cart before the horse.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anything else on your mind that you want to touch on?
Yeah, well, in regards to the masks, our challenge will be around the fact, I don't want to get too legal, that's the problem, primary and secondary legislation. Because the Disability Discrimination Act is primary legislation, this is secondary legislation.
That was the bit I was alluding to, but I missed out on the disability bit.
Yep.
Because
So the Disability Discrimination Act is primary legislation. That is an act of Parliament. This is secondary legislation, and essentially what that is attempting to do is override the Disability Discrimination Act.
And that was my point. But, can they override the primary? Can they try to override primary legislation, or can they bring in secondary legislation in the hopes that it will be adhered to until it gets challenged?
Well, this is where checks and balances comes in the separation of powers. The executive and the courts, the judiciary, and this is a check and balance. And Judicial Review is the best check and balance, I believe, in keeping a government body. And that's why Boris Johnson wanted to downgrade the power of Judicial Review, because he was aware, and in this jurisdiction the power of Judicial Review has been very, very significant, given the history of this jurisdiction.
Yeah. Okay, there's something that's just come to my mind, and it's you may not be able to touch on this, Michael, but it's something called the Online Harms Bill, something that's being brought in and it's being pushed through at the minute, and it's to stop anyone putting anything on social media that appears to be misinformation, disinformation, and they're trying to push it through as an online harm bill. Yep. Have you heard of that at all?
I have heard of it, and there's also the telecommunications bill, which is in the pipeline, which is absolutely frightening, if you care to read that.
Telecommunications bill?
I'll send it on to you.
Right, we'll put that in the show notes underneath as well if you can forward it through. We'll put those ones at the bottom for people to look up. Because from what I can see, the Online Harms Bill is going to try and shut down any dissenting voices on social media that say, we want to challenge this is wrong, and it's wrong because blah, blah, blah. We cannot have a citizen putting out bad information. You're not allowed free speech anymore. I mean, we can have it ourselves. We can have a behavioural change unit within government that says this is how we change public opinion. I think it's called, what do they call it? The nudge group. Nudge?
I've heard that expression.
You heard that expression? It's actually, they actually have a group set up to change our behaviour. And yet we're not allowed to have free speech and say things. So that Online Harms Bill could be something we need to keep an eye on.
There's a major issue in regard to freedom of expression and free speech in that, and no doubt that will be challenged as well.
And quite rightly so. Michael, it's been a pleasure. I'm looking forward to some really good positive information coming out in the next few weeks. Thank you once again for joining us. Always a pleasure. Michael Brentnall. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard.
Watch and listen for free on YouTube, Odyssey, Rumble, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can also follow us on Telegram and Facebook for more information.